This
our blood
conference,
count.
this
We're being
conference will
recorded.
now be recorded.
Okay.
So, so that everyone knows, we do record these. If you would rather be incognito, we understand, and you can keep your camera off or change your name to some cool alias. And that's okay too. So tonight we'll be asking I don't know if we have anyone new here. We do, Glenn.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome. And Brian, I'm not sure what Brian's last name is we could know Brian, or maybe we don't know Brian.
No, this is my first time here. I just saw it on Instagram and I thank you.
Great. Well, I am going to let Lynn lead us, take away the helm here, because I will also have to be dropping off since my infusion ended about an hour ago. So I'll be here for a while, but unsure how long I'll last. And Lynn, I'll be here as backup.
Okay, very good, Michelle. And you be sure and let us know before you drop off. We'll let you make a few comments if you are feeling up to it at that time. And
Thank you. Our fearless leader has joined us. Hey, Rick.
hello, Rick. Well, let me go around. I just want to see who might have something and what, just so the newcomers will know. We're going to let y'all be first to make some comments if you would like about your situation and what's going on. This is as much a social gathering, or maybe it's more of a social gathering than anything else, and we enjoy getting together and visiting and sharing our journey. And so Glenn and Brian will be number 1 and 2. And Jim, do you have anything, Jim Marshall, do you have anything that you might want to share with us later?
No, I don't at this point, but I might along the way.
Okay, very good. I'll pause when I get to that point and give you a shot. And Ashley, you have anything you want to tell us in the way of an update or whatever in a little bit?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. And Michelle, I told you already I'm gonna call on you, so you can. Yeah, right.
Thank you.
I didn't give you an option. Of course, you could always just jump out the window and take the parachute with you. And
I don't think I'd have enough time for it to deploy since I'm only on the second floor here. So I'll probably stay and share.
oh, okay. You'll ride the banister down. Lonnie, how about you? How about you? Do you have anything you'd like to share with us a little bit?
Nothing at this point, but I'm kind of like Jim. Something may come up later that I'll want to share, but not at this point.
Lynn, you're muted. Lynn, you're muted.
There you go.
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Am I back?
You're back.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, when I guess for some reason, and I just got a little notice on the screen that we were being recorded, and was that okay? And then y'all started telling me I was muted. So, okay. Well, I've got a M for That Means Maybe by Jim and Lonnie. And Mary, do you have anything you'd like to share with us a little bit?
No, I don't. I think
Okay.
I might remember my story, but nothing new.
Okay. Well, I put an X by your name, but certainly if you decide you want to share something, uh, just raise your hand, knock on the door, or whatever. And Rick, anything you want to share with us a little bit?
One thing I would really like to just say is I'm so honored and so happy to see Glenn here. And thank you for joining us. It's exciting. Glenn's a celebrity in the CLL world and the cancer world, and I was very fortunate to run into him in a hackathon meeting recently, and the fact that Glenn's now with us is an honor, and we're really looking forward to hearing about you. And I'm also glad I've been able to facilitate after many years a meeting between Michelle and Glenn.
Thank you. That's very kind of you, Rick. And I just was made aware of ANCAN very recently, and I think it's just wonderful the work that you and your team, and it's really phenomenal what you've created and how you're expanding. So thank you for inviting me to kind of hang out. Yeah. I'm a 30-year CLL driver, I like to say.
Oh, geez.
And, goes back to 1991 was the diagnosis, and it's just been amazing the evolution of what we know about the disease and how it's treated, and all the just remarkable targeted therapeutics. And when I was diagnosed, if you had CLL, it just fell within one bucket, and there was no targeted therapies, there was no monoclonal therapies, it was just chemotherapy. And it's just amazing in the last half a dozen years what I've seen kind of unfold. It's really wonderful. So yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Well, Glenn,
Glad you're here.
have you been watching weight all these years, or have you been treated?
Well, when I was diagnosed at the onset, I had a 6-pound spleen, so I had a splenectomy back then, and then I went into what I like to call proactive observation. I never was one with the whole watchful waiting thing. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, I was 28 years young when I was diagnosed, so it was pretty young for the diagnosis. And back then, watchful waiting was like brand new. And I looked at a couple options. My local hematologist had the presence of mind to connect me with who at the time was, the leading academic for CLL at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. He's now a Harvard dean, but CLL was his thing for a couple decades of his career. So back then there was an experimental bone marrow transplant, which conferred with a 20% mortality rate, and everyone who had a bone marrow transplant experimental would go on to succumb from either the procedure or CLL. The other option was, of course, a few different chemotherapeutics and prednisone. And then we had watchful waiting, and that was brand new. And it was really hard for me to get used to what I eventually coined kind of proactive observation, because, I was young and brash and invincible and all that kind of stuff. And then I got this, diagnosis, and I was just wanting to get it in the rear view, put it in the rear view as soon as possible. And I thought that the only way to do that would be to aggressively, have it treated. And once I found out that my siblings weren't a match on the marrow, that kind of sealed it on that. I wasn't going to, go the autologous route. So that put me back into that waiting, that proactive observation, channel, if you will. And all I could really focus on back then, because I was a newlywed and I was young, was just trying to become, the healthiest person that I could be, who happened to be hosting an underlying diagnosis of CLL. So that kind of put me on a path and on a journey just to figure out what might I do to participate in the management of my care. How might I influence the trajectory of the disease? And I was focusing, primarily just on strengthening my immune function and becoming as resilient as I possibly could, because I didn't have a lot of tools. I didn't have a lot of things that I could leverage. So I used a lot of lifestyle approaches over the course of time, and it was in this proactive observation period for a little over 12 years. And these are mostly lifestyle approaches, where the literature is kind of irrefutable, at least in terms of, preventing disease. But I focused on nutrition and movement and stress reduction, sleep hygiene, hydration, all typical kind of sensible things that one should do, generally speaking. And I was trying to create a terrain that would be less hospitable for any type of malignancy. But I did get very sick in 2003. I was incredibly anemic. I had what's called a Coombs positive hemolytic anemia, the night sweats, and I was just very, very sick with the full force and effect of the CLL. But unfortunately, in 2003, there really wasn't. I was waiting for the science to catch up with the disease. We thought if I could put it off for a while, then there'd be all kinds of opportunities, and the science would have evolved, and there'd be real better therapeutics available. And unfortunately, the only thing new, and it was a significant addition, and that would have been Rituxan. It was like brand new right around then, 2002, 2003. And so I had, I was basically told both from the folks at Harvard and locally with my Hopkins physician that, that I really needed to be treated because I was very sick. And so I had to consider that. It would have been the Rituxan and a couple different chemotherapeutic drugs and prednisone to kind of overcome the anemia aspect. But it was certainly would have been given not with any kind of curative, it would have been given basically as a palliative kind of situation. There was no curative intent, at all. And I was really concerned about, back then, once you got treated once or maybe a couple times with a couple options, then that was kind of it. It's nothing like it was today. So I actually refused treatment while getting a CBC and a CMP, literally like twice a week, every couple days. During the week, I would be getting labs drawn and charting everything, and I had some numbers in mind that that would be beyond the point of return. I would go ahead and succumb to the treatment, the palliative treatment. But I was fortunate in that over a course of about 10 weeks, I was able to reverse the anemia and basically over time normalize my systemic, my blood counts. So I kind of got out of that dangerous kind of situation that I was in without any conventional intervention. I made a lot of changes over time, took time off from my work, and did make some changes, and ultimately I was able to clear the leukemia from my systemically. So a CBC and even flow cytometry didn't show any disease, and went ahead and did a marrow, and where the marrow was impacted, in 2003, about 90% of the intratubercular space of the marrow was CLL, very, very crowded. The CLL was still, from a pathological standpoint, in the marrow, but it was then about 40%. So was able to knock it back significantly. And then I was able to maintain that no evidence of disease systemically, not pathologically in the marrow, but systemically, for about 6 years before.
Glenn, before you go further, I had a question. You said you were anemic. Were you treated anyway for the anemia?
No, I wasn't. And I think that my case is the first in the literature of someone who, a case where someone had a Coombs positive hemolytic anemia and was able to come out of it without any kind of steroids.
No transfusions?
Yeah, no transfusions, no steroids, which would typically be used.
Glenn, I had another question. For one thing, our audience isn't just CLL patients.
Yeah.
We also have other blood cancer types. So I did notice you were using like things that those of us with CLL, some of the acronyms would understand. Like Lynn and I would understand, but some of the others may not be as up on those acronyms, even though we do share some. But my question was, did you say you turned down the Rituxan and prednisone? Or did you go on?
What I was offered would have been the whole package of the rituximab, prednisone, and it would have been, I think, fludarabine at the time and one other chemotherapeutic.
Cyclophosphamide.
So it would have been that group. I was never actually offered just like a monotherapy, like a Rituxan.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you then. That's what I thought you said they suggested when you had your anemia and night sweats. Okay, so you didn't go on any of that though.
No, I didn't. But you bring up an interesting point because I never thought about until just now. If I was offered just the Rituxan, I'm not sure. I may have tried that monotherapy knowing that I could have then held back on the chemotherapy if it had an impact. And now in later years, years since 2003, I know of folks that would just do the monotherapy, especially older people, and actually do okay with that. Some people. So that was interesting.
I do. Yeah, we've heard that from some members here. That's why when you said it, it's like it's not that, I've heard that. So I was wondering about it.
It wasn't even a thing back then. It was never like offered. So I was able to go ahead.
So just to summarize before we go on, Al came in a few minutes late, but Glenn is telling us his story, diagnosed in 1991, and that's been over 30 years ago now. And so now 2003, surviving the scare with anemia, no treatment, and now you said 6 years later was where
I was able to maintain that status that no evidence of disease systemically, so from a CBC or flow cytometry, you cannot tell. It was a normal blood count, and only if you would go, pathologically through the marrow to see what was going on there could disease be seen. So I was able to maintain that for about 6 years, and then the disease was visible again in the systemic bloodstream. And again, I made, a bunch of changes with kind of my regimen, my protocol that was evolving over the course of time. And within it took a little over a year, but it had an impact. It was like a second fairly remarkable clinical outcome.
So Glenn, what were those changes?
It was a change in the nutraceutical regimen that I was taking specific for me. And it was mostly around nutraceuticals. It's hard to correlate. I can't, so just to button this up a bit, because, it's a 31-year story and I try to do it as succinct as I can, but I did have success when the disease was visible again around 2009, 2010, I did have some success with some changes, mostly on the nutraceutical side, to a point where all the numbers normalized again. And then I specifically went up to Harvard to my doctor there because they had been chronicling my my case through all of these years. And they did a marrow, which they, at that point, I was asking for marrows frequently because I had this little experiment going on, as informal as it was. And the only way to really know what was going on was to go to the source of where the CLL emanates from in the marrow. And I did get a scan, and there was no evidence that I had ever had a lymphoproliferative disorder. They used terminology like by phenotype or morphology. There was no, they could not tell that I ever had CLL. And so, I've been able to maintain this status for 10 years. I just kind of celebrated my 10th year of no evidence of disease in the marrow without any kind of conventional intervention. And then just the debulking of the tumor burden early on with the splenectomy. And, my case is in the literature, which I felt was really important. Some of you may know that I published a book, N of 1, several years ago. And, my goal for myself and my goal for those that I work with or speak to has never been necessarily set out to, so-called cure CLL, because I never even use that word in describing where I'm at. I'm healed from CLL, but I never use the word cure. And the whole time, and to this day, because I haven't changed much of what I do, it's always been about, strengthening immune function and building resiliency, so that in the face of any of these Western chronic diseases, whether it's diabetes or obesity or heart disease or what have you, it's just it's better to have that, to have a good, strong, functioning immune system for all, against all these things, to kind of protect yourself, especially in the age of COVID and having issues with immunocompromised and not getting good antibody responses and that sort of thing. It all feeds right into the same thinking, and that's kind of how I went about this. So it's just a correlation, the things that I did and the outcomes that I achieved. We haven't done hard science and RCTs and that sort of thing. So it's anecdotal, and I'm just one example.
So I would love to know it, but also, of course, for me, because I have what you have, it's more correlative, but for others here with other blood cancers, what are some of the things that you've seen that can help people in their immune systems, and what else you've helped that perhaps could help others in their blood cancer journeys?
In terms of how should one consider going about strengthening their immune function?
Their immune function and the other things you've done to get as far as you have without treatment, perhaps, or even to help us along in the, I'm not suggesting people not go on treatment at all. What I am suggesting is you obviously learn some things that you share. So some specifics might help here. I would love to know, and others may.
Well, let me just say this, which is very important. If I was as sick today as I was in 2003, you can bet that I would be taking these really remarkable therapeutics. I would again look at my blood and where I'm at, and I would draw a line, and and I would have been treated, conventionally with these targeted therapeutics. I would have probably went with the monotherapy. I wouldn't have gone with I'm a less is more kind of guy, maybe second generation targeted kinase inhibitor. So I want to make that clear, because a lot of folks will maybe read about me or just read the cover of my book and say, oh, this is this guy who's, anti-conventional pharma who refused chemotherapy. And that is true, but it was for very specific reasons at a certain point in time. And so I want to be clear about that. But in terms of, strengthening immune function, it's through lifestyle mostly. It's through getting plenty of sleep and making sure you have good sleep hygiene. Not that you're just in bed for 8 or 9 hours a day, but you're getting deep REM sleep. You're restoring your body. There's an inflammatory, connection with various types of leukemias, including CLL with inflammation. It's hydrating. It's eating healthfully. It's eating a plant-strong diet. I've had the same diet for over 25 years. I do get some animal protein from cold water fish, well sourced, and I have a very plant-strong diet. So movement. I exercise. Basically every day, and I've been doing it for a lot of years. So I try to work on stress reduction. So between stress reduction and hydration and sleep hygiene and a nice clean, diet that isn't full of processed foods and, added sugars and these sorts of things, and getting really good sleep, maybe taking some well-placed supplementation, especially if you have deficiencies, and being aware of how that may be useful. These are the basics. These are the kind of basic lifestyle approaches that helps one, avoid various types of chronic diseases. And so it goes.
Yeah, Glenn, you used a word earlier that I wrote down, and it's a new word to me. And so maybe you could give us, maybe this is what you're telling us, but the word was nutraceuticals.
Yeah, it's the same as supplementation. And so I have, for many years, even before I was sick, I've always been a proponent of whether you want to call it nutraceuticals or dietary supplements. I've, been a supporter of what I call well-placed, well-informed, minimally evidence-informed, if not always evidence-based, high-quality, professional-grade products that are recommended ideally by, if it's not an RD, then it's recommended by a physician, an MD, or an integrative oncologist, or a functional medicine physician that's well credentialed. It makes sense to supplement if you have a deficiency. It makes sense to pay attention to your vitamin D level as relates to various types of lymphoproliferative disorders, as well as COVID, from what we can see in the literature. It makes sense to address any kind of deficiencies. There's a lot of inferior products. There's a lot of, between a Dr. Weil or Joseph Mercola or Dr. Oz or any one of a number of, celebrity physicians and what have you that are saying, take this, take that, take this, take. Well, I'm not a fan of that kind of, it sows a lot of confusion. But supplementation, can have a place in comprehensive, care. And with CLL specifically, it makes sense to look at things like omegas and vitamin D and the EGCG that's in green tea and the curcumin that's in turmeric, because there is some literature showing some correlation, mostly for a more indolent disease, that it could have an impact. So it may be just a matter of drinking these teas and not necessarily supplementing, but being aware, or just using the herbs in cooking. Anyway, I'm happy to answer any other questions, and I can tend to go long and, and anyone and going down the rabbit hole, if you will. So I'll try not to.
Anybody else have a question for Glenn? Glenn, we appreciate you being here with us today.
And I really appreciate the fact that you've been here. You are here after this lengthy journey.
Yeah, thank you.
Glenn, you mentioned
I mean,
Yeah,
how
Go
did,
ahead.
how did it affect your work life?
how did it affect my work life?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, when I was 28, I had just taken over a family media business, and I had been with the company for several years prior to that, and I had just taken over, and I just started an expansion of the business, and then I had this diagnosis, and at that point, I could have decided to sell the business uh, or to hang on. And I just figured, well, I mean, I'm 28 years old. What am I going to do if I sell my business? I gotta keep busy, and I needed to, earn income. So I carried on, and it was challenging because a media business, my company was very demanding. But I would go on to run the business for 25 years before exiting in 2009. And so how it affected me, because I was doing my own thing, and it mostly affected me in my the level of risk that I was willing to take as an entrepreneur building a business. So I was a little more risk adverse, and I was growing the business organically over a long period of time, as opposed to taking more risk with bank money and with acquisitions and things like that I probably would have done without the diagnosis. That's just the reality of when I look back. That's what I see. And I was very, very fortunate in that when I got really sick for surgery, I had this splenectomy, and then I had 8 months later, I was brought back in because, I had really bad scar tissue issue that was a second surgery that ended up with sepsis and a real extended stay in the hospital. And then when I got sick in 2003. So there was extended periods of time where I was very fortunate that the business was doing okay, and I could kind of go on a sabbatical, if you will, and just work maybe an hour or two a day instead of 10 hours or more a day like I was. So looking back, very fortunate to be in that kind of position.
Glenn, you mentioned that if you had to be treated, you would probably lean towards the monotherapy, since that is more in your way of thinking, less versus more. I've been on ibrutinib for 8 years, so I'd say if you have to be treated, I know the combo therapies are a hot thing, and that has been the success in some types of cancer. But do you do things in parallel? Do you do things serially? Is the thinking. So.
I mean, I like, going after multiple pathways, especially with solid tumors. There's a lot of reasons to go with multiple, agents, but with the CLL, CLL, SLL, it's really just a matter of you've got all these remarkable agents, and you've got the standard of care therapies as mono agents, and these trials have just matured, and maybe they're 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, and they're still collecting a lot of data. So if you can maybe do less, and maybe if you consider, like in the case of CLL, like an alkabrutinib or zanubrutinib, which has less adverse events, and that can be helpful for a year or two or more, like in your case, Lynn, because I know folks that have been on ibrutinib for years, and then they're able to actually get off ibrutinib and have a real vacation from it for an extended period of time. So my thinking is, if you do that and it buys you time, then all the literature continues to mature as more agents are going through the pipeline, and you have all these other options and opportunities. And so that's where I come out on it. I think that Brian Kaufman's kind of in that camp as well, from conversations that I've had. I mean, the idea, like years when I was originally diagnosed, if I had a choice, if these agents were there when I was 28 years old, and I was told this is something you stay on for the rest of your life, potentially until it fails, or in perpetuity, or until it fails, or you could do this monoclonal and this targeted therapy, and it's a fixed duration you can get off, I probably, because I was younger and looking for, the knockout punch, which I don't even like to use those kind of, analogies to cancer and punching and war, and I just don't get all that. But anyhow, I probably would have went with the combo and the fixed duration. Yeah. Today I would
Okay.
go
Well,
with one agent. Yeah.
yeah. Well, very good. We appreciate your input today, Glenn. And we lost Brian. He was here with us earlier, but maybe he'll join us later or the next time we're together. But anyway, I'll just go on to Jim. Jim said maybe. Anything you want to add about what's going on there, Jim? You're still,
Adding on it as far as him or me?
yeah, on you. Yeah, on you. Yeah.
Well, anyway, let's see, I'm a sort of a strange animal. Anyway, prostate cancer and a sister with the MM. And so, as I said, anyway, I was here because the disease was first discovered within the lymphatic system, and it was really in there. So since this thing happens to deal with it a lot, I thought, I should understand and with the workings of it. So that's how come I'm here, along with my sister, who still is refusing to attend, although I am working on her all the time to please attend this thing. She's stubborn.
Now, does your sister have some type of cancer? Blood
Yes,
cancer?
MM.
Okay.
Okay, MM, multiple myeloma. And
We go ahead.
then she had a transplant about a year and a half ago, going on 2 years, and she is currently under a treatment. And he gets the treatment a single time a month, and she is having trouble for a week, and she is okay for the 3. And so I'm trying to get her to come on here to discuss it, because I think there could be something done or something told to her that could help her. But as I said, she's stubborn.
Jim, you and I are not that different, right? We share a sibling with MM.
Yes, that is true. Now, on another point, as far as the treatment, I have decided to take some kind of a drug holiday or a treatment holiday, because of the fact that I've been on a treatment which has drained all of the testosterone, aka androgen, and we're out of the body now for close to 4.5 years, and it has its side effects, but I have learned how to get around those. Okay, exercise is a big key. Exercise in this world, I think, is a big key. Hydration is also, I'm drinking anywhere from 48 to 64 ounces a day. I do it. That exercise, and also in the trade wise, our drugs are notorious for putting on poundage, especially around the middle. Well, I decided that's it, I'm done. So I decided to go onto a diet of 2,000 calories a day, and I stumbled across the thing that I really did not understand the foods I should be eating, and I had a potassium deficiency, which is extreme fatigue. And so I learned about the supplements. Anemia, too, I just complained to the doctor because historically, within the treatments we have, you are low on the hematocrit and the HGB, I think it is, Herb.
Hemoglobin, yes.
And so I complained to the doctor, and so he happened to give me the blood test on the B12, the folate, and the creatinine, whatever that is.
Creatine.
And it turned out I was low, okay, on the B12. So I will be attempting to see if that will then increase, okay, the counts, or the blood counts. That'll be interesting. So anyway, I kind of treat this as an adventure. Of course, I've been on other adventures, okay, in a war, etc. else. So, hey, I'm not about to give up yet. So anyway.
Very good. Well, very good, Jim. Appreciate your comments. I'm with another group where a brother and sister in Canada both have CLL. One's watch and wait, and one has just begun treatment. But they're very supportive of each other and enjoy visiting with them. Well, Ashley, my notes show that you were treated with a stem cell transplant for ALL. Let me think. What acute lymphocytic leukemia? Is that right? Or close?
Yes, that's correct.
It's your turn.
So it was just my 3-year anniversary from my stem cell transplant on Tuesday. And good news, I have a new little niece.
Aw.
You have a picture?
Whoa!
Maybe I have one on my phone. I was trying to see if I could do it in the chat, but I can't. So I can find one on my phone.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic. Now, how's your situation in your treatment going to affect or compromise the pregnancy, Ashley?
I'm not pregnant. I have a new niece.
Oh, a
Oh, I
niece.
thought you said
A
a
niece.
new knee. I thought you
Niece.
said
I
a
have a new
little
niece.
knee.
Did you see that look of
Oh,
like terror on her face? Like, no.
yes.
No,
I thought you
no.
said a new me. Oh, you have a new
No.
knee.
All
Oh,
right. Oh, yeah, that's good.
a new niece.
Love it. That is
Niece,
so
yeah.
Rick was expecting a sonogram.
No.
Yeah, I was. I thought you said you knew me. I have a question. I
No.
do have a question for you though. You listened to Glenn, and of course the medicine was really different back in 1991. So it's not strictly comparable. But Glenn was what we would today call AYA, adolescent young adult, when
Right.
he was diagnosed. As an AYA person, how does Glenn's approach sound to you today? I mean, do you think that's something you could adopt, or I mean, how would you balance this non-interventional versus interventional if faced with this today?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I know when I was diagnosed, I think I had a lot more options. And plus I've had a different cancer too. So, I have, acute, I have ALL instead of CLL. So I think CLL is obviously it's chronic, but, I don't know. That's a really hard thing to say, because if you're not confident in the treatment options that are available, then is it worth it to you? I don't know. That's really hard.
Ashley, just as helped me with my education about stem cell transplant. 3 years later, uh, are you still taking any type of medicine that's related to the stem cell transplant, the immune system or whatever?
Yes, I'm on 2 immunosuppressants right now, and also a low dose steroid. I am tapering off of one of the immunosuppressants now. I have chronic graft versus host disease that happens after the transplant, so it's been a slow process coming off of them. And recently I had like a eczema type of a situation, like an eczema type of rash that I have a cream that I'm taking now, that I'm doing now, which it's much better. So hopefully I have a doctor's appointment next week. Hopefully I can continue to come down.
Well,
That'd be great.
hopefully that'll be helpful. I mentioned I'm on another call. I'm on another call that has a lady on there that had a stem cell transplant 21 years ago. So I wish for you many, many more years, and that's really
Thank
exciting.
you.
Well, Michelle, you're next on my screen. Do you want to
Oh,
take a shot and give us an update?
sure, but I wanted to welcome Sally, part of our mod squad here, who's joined us. Hi. Welcome. Yeah, I really don't have much. Do I have much news since last month? Oh, yeah, I do. So today I had my monthly infusion. So thanks to it's really the Benadryl. Sally and I were texting about this the other day. It's really the Benadryl that I think does a number on me versus the actual IVIG, because that's all good stuff for us. So yes, I'm fading, but a little chocolate before the call helped. And Glenn, just so you know, it's the darkest of dark chocolate. So there are no added sugars. That's my big treat to myself that I've maintained with trying to cut out any kind of sugar. So I had my monthly checkup this past month, and as some of you know, I'm on acalabrutinib, and I just started my 6th bottle. This time I'm keeping all my bottles and numbering them just for the heck of it. I don't know, maybe it'll be a new work of art someday. Whereas I used to have, my frontline treatment, I had to turn the bottles in, which I think would be really good for recycling, a recycling program. I thought that's what it was, but perhaps not. They're not doing it anymore. Glenn, I go to Dana-Farber. I'm in Boston. I don't know if you are in Boston and that's why you were going to Mass General. I think
No,
it's
but
Mass General.
I live in DC, but I do keep in touch, with Matt Davids, and I know Jen Brown, and that, so you're probably a patient of one of them, or
Yeah, Jennifer Brown, yeah. But I was on Matt Davids' trial on my frontline treatment, so I know both great physicians. So the good news is I don't have to go in now every month. I'm at every 3 months. But the interesting thing is, and this is something I will disagree with you on, Glenn, is I have now, with all of the information in, they're seeing that people have only been on a BTK inhibitor without the addition of another treatment do not reach UMRD that lasts. It does not produce a durable remission. So they do have to come back to treatment. I was on a trial to prove that maybe with other things, but that's my own genetic markers that I did have a 2.5-year break, but I was on ibrutinib plus FCR for 6 months and then just ibrutinib. So I went off of the ibrutinib due to adverse events, but I lasted almost 2.5 years, really 2 years before the disease came back. But most people but I wasn't on just the one. So now the only way I can come off acalabrutinib is if we try to add in something again and see if that happens to work. So the odd thing that happened is it looks like I needed a biopsy for a breast cancer scare. I ended up not having to have the biopsy, but I went in for it. Thankfully, it didn't have to happen from more imaging, but I had to go off. You have to go off these drugs if you have anything surgical because of the bleeding risk. They don't thin your blood, but they mess with your platelets. So I was only off of it for 2.5 days, and my blood counts had already deteriorated just from those 2.5 days, and lymph nodes started to swell again. So by the time I had my appointment, my numbers had actually, they were a little worse than the month before. Not much, but slightly. And they attribute this to the fact that I was off of it for just that amount of time. So that's how precarious it is. Plus, I'm at the beginning, somewhat at the beginning of treatment. So that would have stabilized a bit maybe if it hadn't just been like 4.5 months. But it's good that it wasn't, I mean, things are still going in the right direction on the most part. So I don't have to go in now until June, which is a nice break after having been going in for, like every week, then every other week, then every month. So this is all good stuff.
So Michelle, the decision whether to add a second drug to the acalabrutinib is still pending. Is that right?
That is, you probably remember more than most that I was considering the zanubrutinib and obinutuzumab trial when it reopened for the next phase. However, since I'm doing so well on the acalabrutinib, and also zanubrutinib has some mixed reviews. Some studies show that it has a worse side effect profile. Some studies show it has a better, less adverse events. And that's kind of, that's not the reason. It's because I am doing so well on acalabrutinib. It's like, why change if it's going well? And if I add in obinutuzumab is what they're talking about. This is one possibility. I don't have to, but if I want to, then if I do reach true UMRD, undetectable minimal residual disease, I think does everyone have that in their particular blood cancer? Ashley, do you have that too? Is that the measurement? So that's what if I do reach that, then I would be able to come off of treatment. If I don't, I still stay on the acalabrutinib, so it's a crapshoot. So if just because I didn't reach it before, although this would be a new drug additive.
Of course, the main thing right now is not to have more of the adverse effects you were having when you were on ibrutinib.
Yeah, you're lucky.
Because acalabrutinib is a like drug, so this is effective if we just can get rid of these side effects.
Right. For me, yeah, the ibrutinib was,
yeah, for you, yeah.
And for you, it seems you don't, 8 years. I only lasted, I shouldn't say only, it's a long time, 4 years. That's not too shabby before they got so untenable. But they've also changed other things now. Now they do cut down dosage with people. Have they done, which they did not do when I came off of it. Now they will cut down on dosage. Have they done that with you, or are you still on the full?
I'm still on the full dosage, yeah, on the same dose. I think with any of these type of treatments, either the side effects just become so unbearable that you need to change, or with time they become less, or maybe you become more tolerant of them yourself. I don't know which, but
or I know. I am curious. We'll see if, part of me is wondering if I was tolerant because I kept thinking it was the FCR residual. And then when I realized a few years later, oh no, this is no more FCR. Or if it's just I don't know, or it got worse as I went on, or what. But so far, knock on wood, so good.
Yeah. I didn't use the word tolerant, meaning, well, what I meant was that the side effects, you've lived with them for a length of time, and you just that just is the new norm for you. So
yeah, it's kind of like a roommate who's annoying, right? But you get used to those little annoyances.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Michelle, are you ready for us to move on to the next person?
Thank you for asking. I am. I know that Lonnie had mentioned maybe he would have something.
Can we just check if anybody has any questions? Can we just check?
Go ahead, Rick.
I had the same
Yeah.
issue with Benadryl.
Really? It's
Yeah, so I
And
was
over
just
the
going to say,
it's
can we
over
just
the counter.
can we just check if anybody has any questions for Michelle? I mean, Herb, that was a bit, that's really, you know, I wanted to just get you in there. So you had some issues around the Benadryl too, right?
for sure. I mean, I only did it. It only happened once because I've only gotten, well, no, actually several times when I had my when I had this immunotherapy. They put back dendritic cells and gave me a massive dose of Benadryl. I was zonked. I basically just wanted to sleep.
What I
I
find
received, I'm going to say I received a combination of prednisone and Benadryl before CAT scan because I get a reaction, break out. So it's to keep me from breaking out. But what happens, I'm so sleepy and so hungry when it's all over with, I don't know which to do.
That was why I fell asleep in the meeting we had 2 days ago because I had just had my infusion and the Benadryl just knocks me out.
It's, I concur.
Anyway.
Benadryl,
Well, that's what it's made to do. So.
it's my
Except
sleeping pill.
it's over the counter. That which is crazy
Right.
when you think
Well, I
about
mean,
it.
it's an old-fashioned antihistamine. That's and basically, and all of those class of drugs make you go to sleep. So in fact, you know, if you instead of a sleeping pill, just take a small dose of any of those antihistamines, and you'll sleep well.
It's good
I
for
take
kids
it.
and airplanes. Kids and airplanes. Small kids.
My wife did that with our baby. One time, I take Benadryl about 4 times a month.
Yeah. It's good on trips to Hawaii, you know, like with a
Yeah.
5-year-old. So, hey, I really enjoyed meeting everybody, and thanks for the invitation. I have to get on a Zoom, but I wish everybody the very best, and thank you.
Glenn,
Thank you so
Hold on, Glenn.
I hope
Hold on a
you'll
minute,
always,
please.
I hope you'll always feel free to come in, stop back, send other people here. You're always welcome. We'd love to see you.
Thank you so much.
Hold on,
Jim,
Glenn.
you wanna talk?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Okay, I see drums in the background. Are you in a band or something?
You know, I was a long time amateur drummer, but I grew up in a musical family, and my media business was around music. And so I published music magazines for many years, including Jazz Times, which was the flagship, which is now 50 years old. So my wife makes me keep the drums in the office here now.
Okay.
I've got one very quick question for you about that. I have a very close buddy. He's on our advisory board, in fact, and he claims he's taken pictures for the record labels of all the most famous jazz artists, and I think he probably has. And I just wondered if you ever run across him. His name was David Fisher, and he used to take pictures up in San Francisco, and he took for all the labels. I'm probably going back 30 years.
Yeah.
Did you ever run across?
You know that name isn't familiar, but it doesn't mean that he hasn't done all those
I'm
great things.
going to ask him about you. I owe him a telephone call.
Okay, very good. You guys have a good evening.
Thanks
Thanks
again.
Bye now. Okay, bye.
Take care. So I wanted to say something about Benadryl, man. I mean, you talk about it being an old drug. I was severely asthmatic and hay fever and eczema as a kid. And I can still remember, as you know, at the age of probably between 3 and 8, of considering that Benadryl to be God's elixir. You know, it would come in and they give me that Benadryl and it'd calm me right down. So that's how I think about it. I can even remember what it tasted like.
And what did it taste like?
it had a really weird taste. It was kind of like fruity and a little citrusy, and it had like a druggy taste. It was a weird taste, but I could remember. I don't know how they give it and what they mask it in now, but I remember what that tasted like, and I look forward to it because it would stop me coughing and wheezing. So I do remember that. Lynn, we should check in with Sally and with Al. I know Sally's got something to tell us. I know.
Well, I've got
And
Lonnie. I've got Lonnie
we
next on
also
my
need,
list. And
yeah, but
Mary.
we need to
I've got
check
it.
in with you. Do you have anything you want to say?
Who are you talking to?
You
I
count
don't
as
want to talk.
well.
I don't want to talk too much, but I remember as a kid having to take medicine that was liquid because kids couldn't take pills. Uh, that I didn't like doing that, but it wasn't as bad as getting a shot. So, well, Lonnie, tell us what's going on. If you have anything to report, or want to tell us that the seas are calm, or
Well, yeah, the seas are pretty calm. I think I would say, reflecting on our meeting so far this evening, really appreciative of Glenn's journey. And I guess I think about it as we all have toolkits, and we have tools in our toolkits. And I'm appreciative that he's talking about one tool in that toolkit. And I think I have CLL, and I'm in active observation. So an observation I've made, I have a work colleague who also has CLL, and she and I have taken very different approaches to our CLL journeys. She basically goes to her 6-month checkups and blood work, and then forgets about it for another 6 months and really doesn't follow what's going on. I, on the other hand, have decided to try to absorb as much as I can about CLL and options that might be out there if and when I need treatment. So I don't know. I feel in some sense like, well, I know let me speak for myself. I know I'm better prepared when that day comes that I'll need to make some decisions in consultation with my doctors. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, seas are calm at this point.
Lonnie, what year were you diagnosed?
2019. So I'm approaching my 3rd anniversary.
Okay.
I'm a person who CLL kind of runs in my family. So my grandfather had it, my father had it. I have a first cousin who was my age. She's now deceased. All have had CLL. But they tell us there are no genetic indicators at this point. But one of my doctors said there is occasionally family clustering, and I'm in one of those families.
There's got to be a link there if they can just identify what it is.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way as well. That there is probably a link.
By a doc who does research, or is a community doc?
Pardon?
Are you being seen by a doc? Where are you being treated, or you're not, or you're on watchful waiting?
Yeah, I'm in active observation, but I've developed a relationship with a CLL specialist, Jennifer Wyack at the James Cancer Center in Columbus, Ohio. I live in Virginia, so I have to travel a great distance to see her. But yeah, she's part of my she's in my toolbox, so to speak.
Right. The only reason I'm asking is because there may be some people who are really interested in genetics. And your cluster might be of interest to some CLL specialist who's
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
at genetics and families.
yeah. Well, interestingly enough, my cousin, who I said is now deceased, went to the James Cancer Center in Columbus, and so I've let them know that I'm a first cousin of one of their former patients, and we both have CLL. So
It
Okay.
is
Anybody else
interesting.
have any questions for Lonnie?
So Lonnie, you see Jennifer Wyack, she's wonderful. Well, as you know, like she's
yeah,
considered one of the top docs. So I'm glad that she's part of your team.
yeah. I did my research, and I'm willing to travel that distance to be able to see her.
And how are you doing? Are you progressing
No,
or are you steady?
no, my case is, I would say, indolent at this point. So my numbers are in the teen. My white cell counts are in the teens. I have no other symptoms. I was diagnosed just in an annual physical where my white cell counts were elevated, and at that point my red cell were below normal, but those have recovered and come back into the normal range. And my wife is a breast cancer survivor, and she's a great example of someone whose toolbox involved both the best therapy at that time, 2004 and 5, which got her into remission. And she has since really paid attention to diet, exercise, sleep, you name it. She's done it, and it's really served her well. So some of her emphasis is rubbing off on me, so I'm benefiting from that.
Well, Lonnie, I'm glad.
I haven't quite gone as far as she has. She's become vegan. I haven't gotten quite that far yet, but my diet is much better than it would have been even when I was diagnosed 3 years ago.
Well, I probably need to shut back on some of the things I'm eating. No ice cream tonight. just dark chocolate.
Yep, I can identify with the chocolate.
Dare we ask what was for dinner tonight, Lynn? Dare we ask what you had for dinner tonight?
Sure, I had pizza.
There you go.
Yeah. It's a little personal pizza about that size.
Okay.
Gluten-free and vegetarian, right?
Pepperoni. Pepperoni. What did I have for lunch? I had chicken salad for lunch. Well, anyway, I'm not the example for the diet, but I have lost about 12 pounds. So my doctor was concerned. What are you doing to lose weight? I said, well, I'm just giving my wife half of the food. So cutting back. I do find maybe it's part of the aging process. The appetite is slowing down too. So, well, Mary, do you have anything you would like to share with us? She's looking. There you are.
I don't have a whole lot to share, but I will say that in October 2020, I had a bone marrow biopsy, and that's when they decided I had smoldering myeloma. And the standard treatment for that is Revlimid. So I went on Revlimid, and immediately some of my numbers skyrocketed. So they had to put me on the customary induction therapy of 3 drugs. And so that brought my numbers back in line. But that was just an example of how one drug doesn't always cut it. But I think it's really interesting that all my paperwork to the insurance and everything says I'm still smoldering myeloma. And I said to my doctor, well, for over a year, I've done the standard induction pharmaceutical therapy for myeloma. Doesn't that mean I have myeloma? And he said, well, yes, but to prove it, you'd have to have another bone marrow biopsy. So why don't we just treat you like you have it and just let the insurance people still read smoldering myeloma? And I thought that was all pretty interesting, but I'm going along with it. And that was my comment.
Okay, well, I am familiar with Revlimid. I am seen by Dr. MD Anderson in the lymphoma and myeloma or department, I guess is what it's called. And he suggested or offered as a possible first round of treatment of Revlimid plus Rituxan. And the other option would have been FCR, which is chemotherapy. And I went with the Revlimid and Rituxan for 3 months. And then after 3 months, we switched. In fact, it was 8 years this month that we switched in 2014 to ibrutinib and Rituxan. But back then, Mary, I took Revlimid for 21 or 22 days out of 28. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, that's what I was doing too.
Okay.
So after 1 year of induction therapy, now we're cutting some of those 3 drugs back, smaller doses, to try to get some kind of a maintenance. But I have high risk genetic factors, so they would prefer I stay on several drugs.
So Sally, I want to ask you a question. How does smoldering myeloma differ from multiple myeloma? Educate us a little bit here.
There are 3, let's say, precursors to myeloma. It's MGUS, which is when your monoclonal plasma cells are less than 10%. Smoldering is monoclonal plasma cells up to about 40%, and anything over 40% is considered myeloma. And those are, as Mary said, are determined by your bone marrow biopsies.
Mm-hmm.
And
so is it all...
the new treatments or the new theories are in the past when with smoldering, especially if it's up around 40%, 50%, they are now starting to treat smoldering like full active myeloma to try to stop it faster.
Mhm.
And
So-
MGUS is sort of watch and wait.
So it's sort of basic. It is the same disease. It's just the degree to which it's advanced. Is that
Yes,
would that be correct?
that's correct. Yes.
Okay.
And unless if you have smoldering and say your plasma cells are at 40%, but you have lytic lesions, somewhere in your body or, long bones or your ribs, then that is still considered myeloma because you've gone into damage in your bones or kidney disease. Excuse me.
Now, someone with smoldering could come up with change kidney function.
If they have distressed kidney function and, the light chains are going up, then they
Right.
would. It's part of what they call CRAB criteria, which is high calcium. I can't remember them all. But anyway, it's been a long day.
Renal?
Yeah, renal function, CRA, albumin, and
I thought there was
bone
anemia.
disease. Yeah. So those are the CRAB functions. So that is what they say whether or not you have, full-blown myeloma. But the bone marrow biopsy is the defining. For instance, when they finally did my bone marrow biopsy when I first was diagnosed, my plasma cells were 85% of my bone marrow.
Mhm.
So there wasn't a lot of room for making antibodies
Wow.
or red cells or white
Wow.
cells.
Wow.
Well, Sally, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on with you?
I guess everybody knows I have multiple myeloma. I was diagnosed in June of 18. My stem cell transplant was in February of 19. I am MRD negative. Very happy. And I'm in the middle of a big move, leaving California and going to the Midwest, going to Indiana. And that's why I
For
was
how
late, because
long?
I had to meet the inspectors.
After how many years in California, Sally?
55.
Oh,
55!
wow.
Oh my gosh!
And 25 in the house that I just finished packing, and they're now finishing and painting. And my furniture arrived in Indianapolis yesterday, and I can move into my new house on June 1st.
Oh, so where are
Oh,
you living now?
Indianapolis.
I'm in an Airbnb on the, I can see the beach and see the ocean right now, and in Santa Barbara. I wanted to stay for the 2 months in Indianapolis so I could sort of get organized with things there. But I forgot about the Indy 500, and there is no place to stay in Indianapolis the last 2 weeks of May. So I decided to stay here. But as Michelle alluded to, wherever she went, I had my infusion on Monday and the Benadryl sleep, and everything is fine. Had blood tests done,
Now,
and as my
what will
doctor
you do
says,
with your
everything
docs,
says look
Sally?
good. Big pardon?
What will you do with your medical team? Will you stay with your existing? Will you shift to a new medical team? I just saw today, that the cancer center, the Simon Cancer Center, just got made an NCCN institution.
Really?
Yes, and I have an appointment with the director of Simon Cancer Center on June 26th. So I'm switching specialists, and he knows Dr. Krishnan at City of Hope. So we've already established that relationship. So all I have to do is now get a primary care physician, but I've got my cancer people all lined up.
Good. Good.
Sally, a question for you. What happened to prompt you to become a Hoosier?
I am I'm actually a Buckeye, but I grew up in Indianapolis, and
Okay.
my sister and brother live there. And I'm actually just sort of looking ahead, because if and when I relapse, both my best friends have left California in the last month. One went to San Antonio, one went to Hawaii, and I don't have the support system in California as I would in Indiana. And I'm 78 years old, so I think I needed to have the support around me, and it'll be nice. My niece is having her first baby in July, so it'll be fun, to be back there for that. And as they said when they saw the new house, oh, good, Thanksgiving at Sally's. So I could be the grandmother and the great aunt for everybody, back in Indiana.
Happy for you.
Yeah, it's going to be nice. I'll look forward to the less heat. It was 90 degrees here today. I do not like it. My sister said it was 62 there today, so I'm happy. And I'm actually building a screened-in porch on the patio so I can sit and watch it rain.
Sally, I'll ask you the same question I asked Ashley a while ago. Since you all are both stem cell transplant recipients, are you on any medications that are special for the post stem cell transplant?
I'm on 10 milligrams of Revlimid, but that's not just necessarily for post, but that's the standard treatment for 5 years after a stem cell transplant. Even though I'm MRD negative, it's just sort of been, there are clinical trials right now testing to when you can stop the Revlimid and not relapse quickly. And right now the standard is between 3 and 5 years. If you're still MRD negative after that period of time, you're pretty safe to get off the Revlimid and you're not going to relapse.
Okay.
So I'm on 3 years on it. So
Well, Sally, you a different kind of stem cell transplant than Ashley. You used your own, but
correct. That's why I had the autologous, where I used my own stem cells, whereas Ashley used her brother's. So I didn't have the host versus graft problems.
Right.
Ashley, you shook your head. Do you want to add?
I couldn't get it from my brother because he wasn't a great match, so I had to get it from I got it from umbilical cord blood.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Okay.
And as Mary said, she's high risk. I'm standard risk. And I have 11-14 translocation, and venetoclax, which I know, Lynn, I think you've been on, haven't you?
No, no.
Oh, somebody was. But anyway, venetoclax is a targeted therapy for just 11-14 translocation myeloma.
Hmm.
It's also
Yeah,
being used for CLL as well, I think.
Yeah, it is it's an option.
Yeah.
Might be the next drug I would take when ibrutinib quits working. Yeah, I had a
It's
friend
supposed
that
to
was
work very well.
with multiple myeloma that joined us. She lives about 50 miles from here, and but her stem cell transplant did not work, and she's had trouble producing out of her bone marrow on the blood products. And she's at MD Anderson right now. She's with pneumonia, trying to get her strong enough to start again on treatment. But
Yeah.
Linda is her name. You may or may not remember her.
Yeah. She lives around the corner, right, Lynn?
Yeah, just a neighbor, just a stone's throw, 50 miles.
That's right.
Texas.
Hmm.
But
Sally,
yeah,
Emery, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Okay, are you going to keep the same email address, or
Yes.
is it going to change?
Same one, same telephone number.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So if you could get Susan to contact me, I would be happy to talk to her.
Yes,
But she sets up appointments and doesn't show up.
I have been, well, I got to figure out another way somehow, because the things I've been trying to inspire her doesn't work. So I may try something else. Okay, it's a go-between. In other words, I ask her the questions, then I'll ask you the questions, and then I'll go back to her if I have to. Okay.
That's great.
I'll do something.
I have an idea for you and for Ashley, and this can work, is to be with them and join the meeting together with them. And even if they're not in the view, you can sort of, once they get the feel and they become more comfortable, they sort of start looking in a little bit, or they'll move behind you, and we can draw them in. But people say, yeah, I'm not a meeting person, I don't like it. But if you have somebody holding their hand the first time, or maybe it takes the first and the second time, you can turn people around like that.
Well, and where the difficulty is, I would have to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, yes.
Alexandria. So
Yes.
so I'll figure out something. I think I can drive her or something.
while we're talking about multiple myeloma, in my notes I have here that Herb's brother had a stem cell transplant at the end of March.
Yeah,
Herb, do you have it?
He had it 2 days ago.
Oh,
2 days ago. Wow.
Right, so he's on, I guess it's officially day 1, because the transplant day is day 0. So yesterday he said he was fine. Today he said he's a little peaked. So
day 5 is the worst.
So he knows he's going to go through a bit of a rough patch, but he did it at Hopkins. Hopkins finally opened up. They keep him in an apartment right on campus, right on the Hopkins Medical Campus. So his once a day trip to the hospital, he doesn't have to go very far. And evidently he said that he'll be there perhaps 3 weeks.
I was there 11 days.
Well, I mean, they don't. It turns out
Everybody's different.
They only let people out on Thursdays. So depending on what a state is on a Thursday, it could be that Thursday or the week after.
Wonder if our week doesn't have Thursdays anymore.
Right. I don't know. Anyhow,
I
so
want to tell you something about Herb's brother. Is that when I was just visiting Herb a couple of weeks ago, we went on a little ride together to pick up a new exercise bicycle for Herb. And on the way back, we took a detour through Herb's brother's neighborhood. I think it was called Kenwood. That was one of the first places for the cherry blossoms to bloom. And it was gorgeous. We drove past his brother's house. It was beautiful.
Herb, what does he have?
what do you mean?
What does
MM,
your brother have?
MM, multiple myeloma.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, I wasn't sure if he had myeloma or what. If he
Right.
ever had, if you or he ever have questions on a technical
No,
nature,
you've been
give
very
me an.
helpful, but I
Give me
can't get him to participate, just like Jim. My brother he's in a stage where he doesn't want to know too much. He feels like his docs are good, and I can't disagree. We've sent him to some of the best people in the country since my wife works in the area of bone marrow transplants.
Oh,
So,
fantastic.
She knows all the chief specialists in the BMC. It's called the BMCTN, Bone Marrow Clinical Translation Network. So Nancy's active in that. So we know he's gotten good care.
Fantastic.
Al, you had something going. Al, you had something to tell us tonight, right?
Herb just passed it off to you.
Yeah, no Benadryl for me.
Ever?
Yeah, Jim and Ashley, I think they need to invite their friends or relatives over and spike their drink with some Benadryl and get them on that meeting. Yeah, that'll help them. Rick, you probably remember when I first got on there, it was pretty difficult for me to talk, and sometimes it still is. And now you're breaking me in to be a moderator, you know. But anyway, back to what Glenn was saying, very interesting, a lot of great points there. You know, who do you know to follow with dealing with so many doctors? I was dealing with some neuropathy before I was diagnosed with the PV. And one of my doctors told me to start drinking the turmeric. And my primary doctor, who is South Korean, told me to stay away from it. It's pretty harsh on your stomach. You know, you have all these questions. What doctor do you follow? My primary care doctor tells me the way he sees my numbers and the way they're leveling out is that he's going to see me off my medication, which is a hydroxyurea. He says, I'm going to be getting off of it here soon. On the other hand, my cancer doctor up at the Mayo Clinic tells me I'm going to be on it for the rest of my life. So, you know, it's a bit confusing on, you know, and back to the supplements. I asked my primary care doctor, do I take supplements? And he laughed and he says, buy the cheapest ones you can. Don't spend your money. Don't spend your money. On the other hand, you know, like I said, it's a bit confusing. Who do you believe? Who do you take advice from?
Well, I don't know.
Anyone.
My primary care doctor is a cardiologist. If I have heart issues, blood pressure issues, I'm happy to take his advice. But I wouldn't ask him advice about my cancer treatment.
Which I didn't, but when we last went over my numbers, that's what he mentioned to me. And like I had this conversation with Rick, is that like for the whole year of 2020, I pretty much was laid out. I was sick that whole year. So, I mean, I felt like I used to do a lot of physical activity. I would bike, I would hike, I would walk, I would ride my bike, do mountain biking. And for that whole year, I didn't do anything. And like I was telling Rick, I feel like I'm losing my strength. I'm getting weak. And I mentioned that to my primary care doctor. And he says, well, you'll never get it back. Now, my cancer doctor up at Mayo, they want to see my energy level getting back up. They want to see me start bike riding, weight training. And again, I have my primary doctor that I've had for years. And then I got my other doctor up at the Mayo Clinic, two different things.
Well, I mean, here's my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. First of all, primary doctors are trained in internal medicine, mostly. Most of them are either family practice or internal medicine, but it's a similar training. And oncologists traditionally have been internal medicine trained, and more recently they've gone into some of these cancer specialties. So, I think a lot of the PCPs fancy themselves as being able to treat the simple cancer stuff, and especially when it's a blood cancer and they're looking at a bunch of numbers, all of a sudden they're the expert. But they're not the expert. We don't even have experts in your disease locally here in Tucson. But by shipping you to Mayo, where we know that Mayo is world class in treating your disease, we've got to assume that that doctor knows what they're saying. And if that doctor is saying to you, you got to exercise more, if that doctor is saying to you, we'd love to get you off, but we don't know, I think that that's who I would be listening to, for sure. And I know you've had a long relationship with your PCP, and that makes it all the more difficult. But your PCP can't stay up with what's going on polycythemia vera. I mean, your PCP didn't even realize you had polycythemia vera. He thought you had a different blood cancer.
No, he was the one that gave me a referral to a hematologist. It was Dr. Manda who first diagnosed me with exerted thrombosis. After the bone marrow biopsy, I was diagnosed with myelofibrosis. Then when I went up to Mayo, I was diagnosed with polycythemia vera.
So your local guy didn't think you had polycythemia vera. He just said you've got something going on, and I'll refer you.
Yes.
But even so, you see how difficult it is to diagnose you with the right cancer.
Yeah.
And the local guys couldn't do it. So how can your PCP stay on top and say, oh no, you're never going to exercise again, and we'll get you off your meds, but you're never gonna. I don't know, Herb. I see you chomping at the bit there. Go on.
No, it's just I was going to ask Sally. It's a different topic. First, let's get on this one, because I was going to ask Sally about how you're going to get the cat to Indiana.
My sister's flying out the day before I leave, and we're driving him, and he's going to have cat tranks beforehand. Maybe I'll just give him Benadryl.
I was going to say Benadryl will do the trick.
As you see, he's very active.
It is always a question when you're dealing with doctors. Who do you believe in, and what do you follow? And if I was advising somebody as a patient perspective, go to a specialist at a teaching facility where they do research, and there's also clinical trials available, and where they have enough patients of your type of cancer that when there's a symptom or a side effect from the medicine, they recognize it. Our son, back in 1977, was diagnosed with acute lymphoma, and we were treated initially by doctors in South Texas, Corpus Christi, but we picked up and went to MD Anderson. We quickly saw that they were light years ahead of what the doctors were in Corpus Christi. And even in this year, in this time and frame where there's so much more information moves about quickly between doctors. When I left the doctor here, the oncologist in Abilene, Texas, a community area of about 125,000 in this area, and went to MD Anderson, I told the doctor there that MD Anderson my doctor in Abilene wants to treat this with R-CHOP. And the doctor at MD Anderson said, we haven't treated your type of cancer with R-CHOP in years.
Right.
I think he was saying that as politely as he could, but I never looked back. I never had any feeling. Now, if I wasn't sure about the doctor I was going to see, though, I would look at going to another specialist. Dr. Awan is a good one in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, or another one in my doctor is about retirement age anyway. But and I think was it Lonnie that was talking about, or Jim talking about getting as familiar and learning as much as you can. There was a time when we used to go to the conferences with the doctors, and there would be a Q&A session, and there is now on Zoom, but you can pump the doctors for information. So I kind of got on the soapbox here. Let me just do a quick summary of what's going. Let me give a quick summary of what's going on in my area.
Yeah.
Evusheld, that is an important drug being used now for cancer patients who are immunocompromised, and the FDA has approved it for us to receive. And so my doctor at MD Anderson said, good, go get it. When you get back home, get your doctor there to prescribe it for you. Well, my doctor at home wouldn't prescribe it. He said that needs to be prescribed by your oncologist. So I contacted the doctor in Houston, which is 400 miles away, and they said, well, yeah, we'll be glad to set you up with an appointment here to come get it, but he won't write a prescription for you back in Abilene. So I'm kind of hung between two places. But kind of on a worrisome note, our daughter, who's 37, has had a swollen lymph node on her neck, and the doctor, she's seeing some doctors in Dallas where she is, and they have said that they think it is Epstein-Barr virus. Yeah.
Epstein-Barr.
And I looked that up, and the symptoms are same as CLL, SLL, and so I sat on that for about 3 or 4 or 5 days, and finally I sent her a text message, and as softly and carefully as I could say it, I said, now, the doctor said they want to do a biopsy probably in 8 weeks if the lymph node hadn't gone down. But there is a specialist at UT Southwest, Dr. Awan, who is very respected in blood cancers. And he would surely do that for you if you wanted him to. And he would also give you could go there and get a second opinion from a specialist. So, as you can see, I feel strongly about specialists.
I think that's
Ask
such
Mary how I
great
feel about it.
navigation I think that's such great navigation for your daughter. You've told us 3 of you already in your family at some point in their life have dealt with, or 2 of you have dealt with blood cancers. And
Yes.
so, there's a good reason on this cluster theory that we talked about with Lonnie, maybe your daughter does have some susceptibility. And
Well,
doctor isn't, I wonder if the doctor even asked her, is there any blood cancer in your family? Be interesting to check with your daughter if they ask that question.
Ask that question. It's interesting. Our son, Tim, who had cancer in 1977, is adopted. We adopted him through Edna Gladden.
Okay.
And our number 2 child is adopted. And then we had 3 biological children. So our daughter is blood related. And our son, who was diagnosed in 77, passed away in 2004, not from the lymphoma. He had a tough battle. He was just 3.5 years old. Chemo, all the stuff that we do, bone marrows and spinal taps and so forth. But the medication that they were giving him they were out of desperation. He relapsed, and the drugs we know about, like Rituxan, that was not around yet. But he was getting Cytoxan or cyclophosphamide, then Christine, BCNU, Donomycin. Well, no, antibiotic, but just lots of different drugs, and it damaged his heart and lungs, and that's what he died on his 31st birthday in 2004.
So
So,
sorry.
Oh,
That's
thank
sad.
you.
yeah.
And
Sally,
we were blessed by 28 more years, so we were grateful for those.
wow.
My nephew had a stem cell transplant when he was 7 years old.
Wow, wow. Well, and it was a real education being there at MD Anderson in the pediatric unit with all those kids with all kinds of cancers, neuroblastoma and the bone cancer, that the osteosarcoma and so forth. There was such a bonding like there is here of family, and the mothers so often were left there while the fathers went to work back in those days, and there was a real friendships that were developed. And several people haven't really talked too much. And I'll go to Rick. Rick, anything you want to share with us? And
No, I think
I'm good.
Rick always
does it?
will have something to say.
No, I mean, I think I've said enough in this meeting today, and I would say that we're very grateful to Lynn for stepping up as a moderator and getting him to adopt our processes, which are a little different. I'm delighted to see Sally amidst all of her tumult that's going on there, and good to see Mr. R there, although he's been very quiet. And I so wish you would pipe up with these comments, because people will grab onto them. You have such good things to say, Al, and every time we wait till the very end and you give us these little jewels. So, chip in with them. I mean, this issue of which doctor do I follow? We could spend a whole hour and a half talking about that. I bet everybody's got a story about they got confused by their doctor.
But
And,
even
and
Well,
we could,
Mary had a big experience, and when we first started talking, I think it's almost 2 years ago, Mary, isn't it? She was going to a regular doctor, and her percentage of plasma cells was over 60%, and I got her convinced that she had to go see a specialist, and she did, and everything worked out.
But of course, we've also heard it here in this group about, I forgot her name, a person in New York who has one doctor in New York and one doctor at Dana-Farber, and they disagree about what to do next. So even high power specialists may not come out of the same. Then you have then you sort of have to just really decide what to do, because both of them are
Yeah, both of them can be very convincing.
right, and they've each got their science to back up what they're saying. So it's on the one hand and on the other hand, but they're both right. So then you sort of have to just take your chance.
No, you have to become an advocate, and you have to, as Lonnie said, you have to know what's going on. You have to research it yourself and become your own advocate.
And I would say one of the values I find in being part of various support groups is I hear different stories, so that if I have two doctors who are disagreeing, I don't just have those two doctors. I actually have more doctors who are speaking into the situation. Granted, every patient is unique, but if 9 doctors out of 10 are recommending one type of treatment and there's an outlier, then I know if I have to make that decision, am I going to go with the outlier or am I going to go with the conventional wisdom at the moment? Mm-hmm. That's where I find groups like this really, really valuable.
Right. I agree.
And again, like Sally said before, nobody knows this body better than what we do.
ain't that the truth?
Yeah, and if you have a doctor that won't listen to you, how's he know what's going on with you?
Right.
So Lynn, I have to share that I'm on the Evusheld journey as well, trying to get it. And I started with my primary care physician, and she had never even heard of it. She had no idea what it was. She said, I'm going to have to research. So she's still in her research stage. So I've contacted my CLL specialist and waiting to hear from her. And yeah.
If anybody needs, I have a link to a data site where you can put in your zip code and they will tell you who has it, how much they have, and how much they were received, and how much is still available by clinic or hospital. So
I
you can.
have all of that. And here in our small city, we have at the local hospital, there are 280 doses. But I can't get anyone to prescribe it for me.
I know what you mean. We have 150 in our local hospital here a couple of days ago.
Santa Barbara only had about 282, and I got it the day after I asked for it. So I felt I was very lucky.
Yeah, I may just have to find a local oncologist so I can get somebody to subscribe it, and then I'll probably have to tell him, "You don't know what Evusheld is? Let me show you this."
How long
And
is
by the
the
way,
half-life?
you do know that the dosage is increased from 150 to 300
Yeah,
milligrams.
doubled it. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Did you get the double dose, Sally?
Yes. Actually, I got it the day after they announced that, so they went ahead and gave it to me.
Well, they brought out 2 bottles for each buttock.
Oh, I got mine. Yeah. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I was getting worried there. They kept pulling it out. Yeah, I'm glad to have it. I had to go to a cancer center and get it.
Yeah.
Not one that I've been.
How long is the half-life? And I mean, could you, for example, manage to squeak in because they were going to have to throw some bottles away?
I
Not
don't.
the half-life, the expiration.
I don't think it's like the COVID vaccines. I haven't heard anything about that.
Well, it's antibodies, so.
They're monoclonal antibodies, right?
I think they're guessing at 6 months.
No, that's how long it lasts.
Yeah. So you might have to go again after 6 months.
Right.
What
I
about
figure that the COVID vaccines are going to be every year like flu vaccines.
Yes.
Sure.
What about the 4th vaccine? Has anybody gotten the 4th vaccine or the
I've had
2nd
four.
booster?
I've had it.
I've had 3 full vaccines and 1 booster.
So are you going to get a second booster?
I got a second booster.
Did you get
Have
it?
you had 3 full vaccines?
Yeah, they were all the same dose.
Yeah, the booster was the
So
same
you've
as
had
the first
5.
You had 5.
No, I had 4.
Okay, I've had 4 as well.
1 booster and another booster.
Well, the boosters are half strength.
Well, Pfizer, don't they have half strength, or is it Moderna?
Yeah.
One of them
Moderna
is.
was half strength on the booster and full strength.
So my
That's what
rheumatologist,
they told me.
my rheumatologist said I should switch to a different manufacturer for my second booster, and I would have better coverage. But then he kind of grumbled about they're all just trying to make money anyhow. So.
Well, I thought of that. I mean, I've had my original shots were all Pfizer. And so this time when I went for a booster, I asked for Moderna.
Oh. Yeah, I think
I did the same thing for my booster, but I only got my booster in January, so I don't think that I should probably go for another booster until at least towards the end of June or July.
Correct.
Oh, it's not
The
4 months.
in Israel are not encouraging in terms of even the protection that the 4th shot gives you. Their data seem to say that the protection wanes within a couple of months. So we may be in this booster business for like the flu for quite a while.
Yeah. Al, you have something to say about these these boosters and the full shots, right?
Well, okay, so The booster, well, the first, I got the Moderna. So I got the first 2 shots of Moderna, and I went with my mom to get the booster. So as we're waiting there in line, the girl asked my mom, well, I overheard the conversation. So they gave my mom the full dose. So by the time I got up there, I asked for the full dose, and the girl asked, so what underlying health conditions do you have? What qualifies you? And I said, I'm a cancer patient. And she goes, oh, she says, okay. She says, we're going to give you the full dose then. So the booster was only half of the original shot, meaning the third shot was the same amount as the first and the second.
That's for Moderna, but Pfizer's booster, one of them is half a dose. I think Moderna's a full dose,
Mm-hmm.
but Pfizer's only half a dose for a booster.
Well, maybe Moderna's was half the dose also, but depending on your age, for the elderly and people with underlying health conditions, they were getting the full dose. So everybody else was just getting half a dose as a booster.
I had the third Moderna, which was full strength last
Yes.
September.
Yeah.
And I had no antibodies after the first 2, and
Oh,
I have
wow.
not been tested. I'm of course in active treatment, which means I probably still not developing any antibodies. But I was around COVID the last week of December. My wife had it, and we were traveling together. We continued to sleep in the same bedroom and bed. She was really sick, and I was afraid to leave her. She falls down and things like that. So anyway, I managed to not get it, or if I had it, I didn't have much of a case. I had sort of a cold, but I was tested a week later, and the test was negative. And
So
well,
I,
folks, it's getting close to 9 o'clock in Texas. That means Jim yawned a while ago. It's 10 o'clock in Virginia. Wouldn't want to push you folks too long and wear you out. Would like to have you anxious to come back again in a month. So
Okay.
well, let's say adios, farewell, in all kinds of languages, and everybody stay well.
Thank
Good.
you.
do.
Good
Thank
See you
seeing
you.
you,
next
Mary.
month. Sally, good luck with your move.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
When do you leave? When do you leave?
May 26th.
May 26th. Oh, we'll see you. We're gonna see you in California next month.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye bye, Ashley. Thanks for
Bye.
joining us.
Bye.
Mary,
Hi,
good seeing
Sally,
you.
Lonnie,
I
Jim.
miss your bird.
Yeah, he's a pain.
But he's cute.
Yeah.
Take
Okay,
care
bye.
of yourself.
You
Bye
too.
bye. Thanks, Lynn.
You bet. You bet. Thank you for making it. Where do I leave? Click right here. End the session for all.